All right, now to implement the server-side filtering, first we need to modify our repository and pass a filter to this getVehicles method. Now for this filter, we need two classes. One is a domain class, and the other is an API resource. Now in this simple application, these two classes are identical, but in a larger, more complex application with complex business rules, you may want to limit the filters that the client can send to the server. And then you can set the other filters on the server based on the user's role and permissions. So that's why we need two separate objects. And also, as I explained before, you should not expose your domain classes outside your API boundaries. So first, in core/models, I'm going to add a new C# class, call it filter. For now, I'm going to add only one property here, a nullable integer called makeID, because it's optional, right? Now, at the same time, I'm going to create an API resource here, filter resource. Once again, nullable integer makeID. And before we forget, let's do the mapping. So we go to mapping profile. And in the section for mapping API resources to domain objects, we create a new map from filter resource to filter. Now back in our repository, I'm going to add this filter object here. Now I'm surprised we're not getting a compilation error because we have broken the repository contract. Anyway, let's go to iVehicle repository and add the filter parameter here. So this is the domain part. Now let's get to the API. So we go to vehicles controller. We add this filter resource parameter here, filter resource. Next, we map it to a filter domain object. So filter equals mapper.map, filter resource to a filter. And we give it this filter resource. And next, we pass this filter object to our repository. Okay? Now finally, the actual filtering logic. So we're going to do something very similar to what we did on the client side. So instead of returning the results immediately, I'm going to declare a variable called query. And we don't need await yet. Now here we're not going to call toList because we're going to compose a query dynamically. Now we're going to check the filters. So if filter.makeID has value, and we set query to query.where. Now this is a link extension method that we need to explicitly import. Okay, so give me all the vehicles with model.makeID equal filter.makeID.value. Now here we have a compilation error, cannot implicitly convert type iQueryable of vehicle to iIncludable queryable of vehicle. So because of the calls to these include methods here, we need to add as queryable method here. And with this, we get an iQueryable of vehicle. So we apply all these filters here, and at the end, we return query.toList async. And of course, we need to await the result. Now let's test this API with Postman. So here in Postman, I'm going to call /API/vehicles. So now in the result, we get all the vehicle objects. However, if I add makeID and set it to 2, now we get only one vehicle, and that's the vehicle with ID 3. If I put an invalid make here, we don't get anything. That's great. If I leave this value, we get all the vehicles. So our endpoint is working properly. Now, when we have multiple filters, you're going to append them using ampersand. So makeID is 1 and model ID is 2. So next, we're going to go to the client side and pass these filters as query string parameters.